Hey everyone, I'm Ultima456, you're the Ultimates, and welcome to episode 131 of Let's Play Danganronpa 2, Goodbye Despair. Mukuro was treating Monokuma like she would treat her own sister. If the other students saw her acting so weak, they'd never believe she was the same person who fought Sakura in the gym. And not just that, if anyone from her mercenary past could see her now, her stark change in attitude might make them think she was someone else entirely. Monokuma continued to rail against Mukuro. Nope, he's gonna die. I know it's sad, but you just have to face the facts. Monokuma wriggled his limbs and danced around, and then pointed right at Mukuro's face. Because Makoto is going to die by your hands. Huh? Infighting among the terrorists. The big bad terrorist silences the weak-willed Makoto before he can leak any information. Doesn't that happen all the time? In the end, all the desperate things you said in the gym turned out to be lies you just told to escape. You told just to escape. Pooh. Mukuro frowned at Monokuma. You can't do that, Junko. I won't let you do that. As she blurted out those words in a trembling voice, Mukuro was gripped with confusion about what she had just said. Am I defying Junko right now? Why? It was a strange feeling. To Mukuro, it was like she was standing on the ledge of a tall building and imagining what would happen if she jumped. A destructive feeling akin to holding a friend's baby and wondering what would happen if you tripped and fell. Before she knew it, fear and anxiety had suddenly taken control of Mukuro's heart. As a member of Fenrir, and as ultimate despair, Mukuro had killed innumerable people. She had handled live grenades before. She had descended from the sky in a parachute as anti-aircraft weaponry fired all around her. Her heart never wavered on the battlefield, but now it felt like it could collapse at any second. Monokuma, however, was as stable as a tree, and slightly tilted his head to the side. Huh? Weren't you listening to my story? I'm not the one who's going to kill Makoto. You are. What are you saying, Junko? Monokuma began giving a strange explanation to a very confused Mukuro. Do you know what the suspension bridge effect really means? It means you push the person you love off a bridge and they'll be yours forever. They'll be yours for eternity. I haven't heard that at all. Life doesn't always follow what your textbooks say. It's sad, but that's what love is. His words made no sense, and Mukuro couldn't think of anything to say as she stood there dumbfounded. Meanwhile, Monokuma continued his little speech, intentionally saying things meant to antagonize Mukuro. Basically, this is your big chance, you know. If you kill Makoto right here and now, nobody will ever take him away from you again. Makoto Naegi, dead by dawn. The last name he ever spoke was Mukuro Kusaba. The last person he ever smiled at was Mukuro Kusaba. Doesn't that sound wonderful? There was a certain appeal to Monokuma's twisted suggestion, and Mukuro found herself unsure of her own judgment. This is wrong. It has to be wrong. But it's really Junko saying all this, so doesn't that mean it's right? No, this isn't Junko, it's Monokuma. Monokuma. And are you sure you want to help Makoto? Once he gets better, he's going to know everything. He'll know what you did to your classmates. I can't believe you would actually erase your friends' memories of their time together and force them to kill each other. Makoto might get mad at you and say, our real enemy isn't the bear, it's her. Do you really want him to blame you for this? Mukuro's face turned pale. Pooh! Or are you going to kill the others? If everyone except you and Makoto dies, you'll be able to spend the rest of your school life together. We can't hold a class trial with only 2 people. It might be a good idea for you both to live the rest of your lives in this academy forever. No, that's wrong. And what are you going to do if his memories return? It's not like you were dating Makoto or anything. You were just watching him from afar the whole time. Man, you're so shy. You could shoot people's hearts and brains no problem, but you can't even woo some stupid boy into liking you. Do you want to know who Makoto had a crush on before his memories were taken away? Mukuro trembled as Monokuma continued pressing the issue, gradually loosening the screws, keeping her heart secure. So Mukuro chose to pretend she didn't hear anything at all. All emotion vanished from her face, and she looked silently for Makoto's e-handbook. If you're looking for his blood type, it's not written in the handbook. Actually it was, but anyway. Mukuro's face turned pale. Within 5 seconds, her plan to ignore Monokuma had already failed. I'm pretty sure it was. It's definitely written in this game, but I think it was in the first game too. But since your headmaster is made up of 50% kindness, I'll tell you anyway. Makoto's blood type is B. As soon as she heard him say that, all the anxiety, horror, hostility, malice, and dread churning within Mukuro had completely vanished. Thank you, Junko. Mukuro's eyes sparkled without a hint of suspicion, so she turned her back to Monokuma without a hint of suspicion, and walked toward the refrigerator containing the blood packs. Fresh blood packs should have been prepared before the plan took effect. They'll last in cold storage for 21 days. They should still be good. Despite her emotionless face, Mukuro let herself feel a small amount of satisfaction as she took a blood pack from the refrigerator. As Monokuma watched her, his normally emotionless eyes twitched ever so slightly. If a third party could see his face right now, or even if the other students could see his face right now, they'd wonder, is Monokuma surprised? That's right, they'd have the same shocked look on their faces as if they were seeing Monokuma for the first time. At that moment, a whisper crept out of Monokuma's emotionless face. There should be a limit to how disappointing you can be. It was far quieter than a mosquito's wings. Even with her battle-hardened hearing, Mukuro couldn't hear what he said. Monokuma shook his head, and the voice returned to normal. It's not like I care that you, the ultimate despair, has hope in anything. It's not like I expected much from you to begin with, so this'll at least help me feel despair. But seriously, you disappoint me. Just so you know, despair and disappointment are completely different things, okay? They're as different as bears and pandas. What are you... Mukuro's body started to shake as she turned back to look at Monokuma. He hadn't started talking any differently than usual. Junko hadn't turned off the voice modulator and started talking in her real voice or anything. And yet, Mukuro was utterly terrified. She was terrified on instinct, not as a soldier. Half the reason she was terrified was because of her instincts as the ultimate despair. And the other half was because she was Junko's older sister. Even through Monokuma, her instincts were telling her that Junko was annoyed with her. Junko? Why are you annoyed? Is it because I betrayed you? Or is it because I didn't die like you wanted me to? Ugh, sulked Monokuma. I'm beyond annoyed. I'm really, really angry and I'm really, really disappointed right now. I'm so pissed I could take a rage nap right now. Monokuma's anger didn't seem any different from his usual anger toward the students, but Mukuro could instinctively sense another emotion mixed with it. Right now, she could feel that Junko was feeling hopeless disappointment. It's normal for someone who's disappointed to lose hope, but for ultimate despair, disappointment means something else entirely. To them, disappointment was tantamount to losing despair itself. Mukuro was a member of Ultimate Despair. At her sister's behest, Mukuro had soiled her hands many times in order to fill the world with despair. Despite her pride toward being a member of Ultimate Despair, there was a clear difference between Mukuro and her sister. Junko Onishima was despair incarnate. She was born in despair, letting it infect other people's hope so it could rot them from the inside out, twisting them into her own image. For Junko, feeling hope was its own despair. Creating despair in others created despair in herself, which caused her to feel both intense pain and intense bliss. Junko had walked the fracture created from the conflict between pleasure and penance all her life. Eventually, the fracture would widen until it swallowed the world and tore it in half. But Mukuro, on the other hand, had neither hope nor despair for the world. At least, not when she was a member of Fenrir. Ever since she was a child, Mukuro believed she was meant to spread despair because of her sister. She didn't harbor any ill will toward the world. She simply accepted she was meant to spread despair and chose to walk the same path as her sister. The doubt she felt was only a recent development, when Junko told her about the plan, when she watched the world burn at the hands of the terrorists wearing Monokuma masks. She never wavered once. However, as soon as she heard about her sister's plan to make their classmates kill each other, Makoto included, a strange feeling began to stir within her. What started as a seed of doubt soon grew into a thorny vine ensnaring Mukuro's feet. As soon as she disguised herself as Junko and finished meeting the other students, as soon as she had confirmed that everyone's memories had been completely taken away, that vine began tightening around Mukuro's heart. They're gone. Junko's the only one who knows about me now. That's it. But that's no problem. It's just like the old times. Things will never go back to how they used to be, but that's fine. This should be fine. She had relinquished the past 2 years she had spent with her friends so she could betray them and deliver death and despair unto them. Though her heart ached, Mukuro was beyond feeling guilt or remorse for her actions. But the question, why does my heart ache like this, still remained unanswered. Perhaps that's why she spent so much time talking to Makoto while he was in the nurse's office. And when Makoto gave her that one particular answer, something changed inside her. In return, I promise that if I do decide to kill someone, it won't be you. The words Mukuro blurted out to Makoto weren't improvised to further her role as Junko. It was an honest sentiment from the bottom of her heart. She was even planning to ask Junko herself if Makoto could somehow be spared from her plan. Over the past 2 years, Mukuro's interests had been slowly shifting away from her sister and toward the world itself. By extension, her interests also included Makoto, the first person to ever smile at her and make her feel connected to the world. He was like a sapling of pure honesty that had taken root in Mukuro's heart. But by the time she realized that, the tree had already rotted. As Mukuro struggled to understand the situation, Monokuma let out a sigh and said, "I wonder which part of you is a wolf anyway. You're just a dog that blindly follows Junko's orders. What does the tattoo on your hand even mean? Are you just a bitch who's pledged her loyalty to her owner? I bet Toko would say that. I'm positive." Monokuma continued to talk as Mukuro stood in confusion. "I was obviously lying when I said Makoto's blood type is B." "What?" cried Mukuro. "You lied, Junko?" "A normal person would have been suspicious. I never thought you'd actually believe me just now. I must have misplaced my eyes because I totally did not see that coming. Not even with my ability to predict the future." How shocking. Geez, I'm about to start crying my eyes out like some sort of robot cat. Seriously. "It's going to be okay, Junko," said Mukuro. "I know our plan kind of fell apart, but I'm still on your side. Are you feeling alright? Because I'll do anything." Snap! A harsh sound came from Monokuma's mouth. That sound was one of my circuits overloading? Yeah, that sound was one of my circuits overloading. It's been so long since I've felt this angry. Meet me on the roof of the school. I'll smash out all your baby teeth. Monokuma started shadowboxing in front of Mukuro, who remained frozen in place, clutching a blood pack in her hand. She still looked confused, and Monokuma threw up his arms in frustration. "You're so disappointing. I can't even predict it anymore." Rawr! A threatening roar burst from Monokuma's mouth as he leapt at Mukuro with his sharp claws extended. At that moment, her face became completely emotionless. It was not a conscious action. The defensive instincts she honed during her time with Fenrir temporarily suppressed her emotions as she countered Monokuma's attack. Mukuro grabbed a nearby IV stand and used it to parry Monokuma's claws. However, Monokuma's claws seemed to be made with a special alloy and easily sliced the bar in half diagonally. But instead of following up his attack, Monokuma continued talking to Mukuro. "I guess you're not much of a disappointment when it comes to fighting. In fact, if you were so pathetic that you died from that single attack, that would have been interesting in its own way. But right now, you're just incompetent at everything." "I'm sorry," said Mukuro. "I couldn't help blocking your attack. But there's no way I can fight you, Junko. After all, I'm all you have. I'm the only one who understands you at all." Mukuro's words were riddled with endless dismay. The contrast between her usual stoic self and the way she was acting now was so stark, people might assume she had multiple personalities. However, Monokuma just quietly stared at her. He was perfectly still, as if all his functions had powered down completely. But Mukuro continued to share her feelings. "There's no way I can just leave you alone." And then Monokuma broke his silence. But at that moment, a monitor in the nurse's office lit up, displaying a girl's face, Junko Enoshima. At the same time, a voice completely unlike Monokuma's began to play from the speakers. "Hey, Mukuro." Junko? It had been several days since Mukuro had heard her sister's real voice. Though her face remained emotionless, excitement sparkled in her eyes. However, that shine immediately dulled. "I'm grateful to you, Mukuro. I mean it." Junko's voice, emanating from the speakers, sounded very gentle and kind. "Junko? I'm really sorry. I said so many mean things to you. I even tried to kill you earlier, and I was about to make you do something horrible just now. Even though I know about your feelings toward Makoto. You don't have to force yourself. Even if you didn't notice, it was totally obvious to anyone looking at you. You never cared about the class photos, but when Makoto said he was going to take one, you made sure you were facing the camera." And then, Junko Enoshima, the ultimate despair, flashed a smile, a pure, sweet smile. On the monitor, she looked like a normal high school girl teasing her older sister. And yet, Mukuro could feel despair and anxiety encasing themselves around her. "I always thought you should have tried hard to take pictures with Makoto. But I guess that's what makes you so disappointing. Still, even though you're disappointing and annoying, I still love you." Mukuro trembled upon hearing those words. "I love you." That's all she ever wanted to hear her sister say. Mukuro believed. No matter what Junko said, she believed she really loved her. She believed she was the only one who could truly understand the despair known as Junko Onishima. She was naive. As soon as she heard Junko say, "I love you," Mukuro realized she never completely understood her sister. It was only at this moment that Mukuro finally understood her sister's feelings. Junko's words right now were kind. Perhaps that kindness was completely honest. The words, "I love you," might have been true as well. However, for Junko Onishima, this was her way of saying goodbye. She was severing the ties between them. It was painfully clear to Mukuro. And then, before she could even say anything, the girl in the monitor made a remark that cut Mukuro to the bone. "I'm sure someday you'll make your dreams come true." Ultimate despairs never talk to each other like this. A simple truth stabbed into Mukuro's heart. Junko had no further use for her. Her own sister was parting ways with her. Mukuro had dedicated over 10 years of her life to the cause of ultimate despair, and at this moment, it all counted for nothing. But those years no longer mattered to Mukuro. Her sister's rejection was more than enough to send her into the depths of despair. That's why Mukuro, even now, clung to a small sliver of hope. Meanwhile, Junko was still on the monitor. "Yeah, right. Did you really think I'd say something that nice? You're so annoying. Can't you just hurry up and disappear already?" Mukuro hoped Junko would say something like that. She hoped that she'd start verbally abusing her again, or call her useless and incompetent. Mukuro was no masochist, but she'd prefer to be showered with bullets and contempt than endure this kind of emotional pain. But, "I love you, Mukuro. Bye-bye." The monitor went black, leaving Mukuro to process the horrible goodbye she'd just received. And as if on cue, Monokuma started moving again. "Isn't family love so nice? By the way, did you know that in about half of all murder cases, the killer is a family member?" Monokuma spoke in his usual tone of voice, but it was unclear if his words were getting through to Mukuro. Mukuro let the blood pack in her hand fall to the floor and tightened her grip on the iron bar she was still holding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Junko, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry." She mumbled quietly, as if she were chanting a spell, and walked past the blood pack on the floor to Makoto's bedside with the iron bar in her hands. I'll do it properly. I'll make sure I do it. So. Oh, said Monokuma, perking up. What are you going to do properly? What are you going to properly do to Makoto with that big, thick rod you've got there? Are you going to do him, or are you going to do him in? Either way, I'm starting to feel some heart-throbbing excitement. Mukuro looked like she had been completely broken. Monokuma walked closer to her with eager anticipation. Suddenly, Monokuma's body silently floated into the air. Huh? With no expression on his face, Monokuma tried to see what had just happened to him. And in the blink of an eye, an iron bar ripped through his body. The tip of the bar, which had been cut diagonally earlier into a sharp point, went straight through Monokuma and stabbed into a surveillance camera. The lens was completely destroyed, and the camera shot out sparks as it broke down. The iron bar was still stabbed into the surveillance camera as Monokuma dangled from the other end. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but only static came out. A few seconds later, his functions came to a complete stop. Without making a sound at all, Mukuro had kicked Monokuma into the air. As soon as Monokuma's power source and his bomb circuit had perfectly aligned with the surveillance camera in the nurse's office, Mukuro plunged the iron bar into all three of them. No normal human has the skill to utilize such a technique. Not even an ultimate. All the hesitation within Mukuro had vanished. Her eyes sparkled like a panther stalking its prey at night. A tense aura surrounded Mukuro, even more so than when she fought Sakura earlier. Ignoring Monokuma's lifeless form, she looked at Makoto as he breathed softly and remembered her sister's parting words. So this is despair. She mumbled to herself. I'm so sorry, Junko. I never really understood what despair was. She spoke without emotion, like a machine. But it's going to be alright now. I finally understand. Hidden within her, passions began to stir. So, I'll make sure I make you happy, Junko. I'll make sure I fill you with despair. I'll save Makoto. I'll make sure the others don't die. I'll let them escape from this place. I'll deal with the people on the outside too. You invested so much time and killed so many people for the sake of this plan, and I'll destroy every last remnant of it, for you. This was not an act of vengeance toward her sister who had abandoned her. This was an act of mercy. Stuck between the ultimate despair and the hope she gained from Makoto, Mukuro was being refined into something that was unlike despair or hope, and she had no way of knowing where her path would lead. Over 10 minutes had passed. The sound of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hall. Genocide Jack had continued to dodge Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements, but when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert," Genocide Jack stopped in her tracks. "Oh my. Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly. They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin, but in my case it's more like a Venn diagram. Words can't explain these hot waves of passion squirming from the top of my head to the tips of my toes." As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in her room. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her, while the rest left to search the grounds of the school. As soon as the door to the nurse's office opened, Kyoko saw a non-functioning Monokuma with a hole in its chest and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse's office though. On the way there, the students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. This was a clear violation of school regulations, but if Mukuro was allied with Monokuma, those regulations wouldn't apply to her anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Bashiki Madurai. So the students assumed that Madurai had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Mukuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kyoko could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting there recently. Looks like they're already gone, Mondo remarked, but as he was about to leave, Kyoko spoke up behind him. "I'm going to stay here with Chihiro and search for clues." "Huh?" asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening. Clues?" Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. "Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you would be the best candidate for investigating machinery." Sakura spoke up, "But isn't that dangerous?" Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Mukuro, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, "Alright, let's leave things there. Getting closer, sort of maintaining that 100 per episode. It is hard to read this much and that fast, but we're getting there. We'll continue next time. For now, I want to thank you all for watching episode 131 of Let's Platinum Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair. My name is Ultima456, you're the Ultimates, and I'll see you next time.